Hello friend, welcome to SharkJets. I'm SkidVis. In this video, I'm going to show you how to add a quick and easy leaderboard to your games. A few weeks ago, while working on my Duck Hunt Auducka mashup, I found myself in need of a leaderboard. Oculus has one available for developers, but your game has to be approved by them, and there's no way they'd approve my mashup. My next thought was that since the Quest is basically an Android device, I might be able to use Google's leaderboard. But unfortunately, Oculus has stripped away the Google Play services, so that was a no-go. Thankfully, however, I was able to find a quick, free, and simple leaderboard over at Dreamlo.com. Thanks to the author of that website, I was able to ship my game with leaderboards. So I thought I'd help you avoid the same headache. But before we jump into some code, please make sure to like and subscribe for more videos. All right, let's go. Okay, so the first thing we'll want to do is head over to dreamlo.com. That's DREAMLO.com. You can see on the screen. And you'll be presented with this screen where you can get a promo code or a leaderboard. So the biggest thing to keep in mind is how many leaderboards you're going to need. So for instance, for my Duck Hunt game, Auducka, I had 4 songs, so I needed 4 leaderboards. So I had to go through this process 4 times because you just get 1 leaderboard. So if you click on the Get Yours Now button, you'll be taken to a different page where you get a private URL now. This one I'm only using it for this example, so I don't need to worry about it, but I had 4 unique IDs for each of my 4 songs, or for each song that I had, which was 4 songs. So this is really easy. You get a private ID that you can post the scores to, as well as another ID for you to get your scores. And the best way to show this, I find, is with a program called Postman. It's a free program you can get. Just search for Postman and you should find it. But the link's also going to be in the description. And with this, you can test JSON and APIs basically. So it's just a really quick, easy way to make sure that any problems that you're encountering are either on your end or on the API. Because if the API is broken and your code's not working, you're going to be scratching your head. Is this something I'm doing? Is the API down? Whatever. So I like having Postman available so that I can test APIs to make sure that they're working as expected, and that way I know if there's any problems, it's in my code. So with that URL that they presented there, like I said, you can add a score to a user. You know, for instance, this is saying that Carmine got a score of 100 for this particular leaderboard. So what they do is they just append that information. You have /add, which means add a score to the leaderboard, the user's name or the player's name that is being tracked with this score or assigned the score, and then what the score actually is. So in Postman, I just copied that right here. You can see it says add Carmine 100, and if I send that, I should get back an OK message. There it is. That means yes, the API received that score and everything's fine. And then, like I said, you also get a lookup score down, or a lookup URL over here, getting your scores. And you can get that data back in different formats. There's XML, JSON, pipe, quote, that kind of stuff. In this example, and I also recommend that you use JSON, so you just put the /JSON at the end of that. And I copied that over here as well. So you can see it's just the same thing with /JSON. And when you do a get on that, if there's no scores on your leaderboard, this is what you'll see. You'll see Dreamlo Leaderboard null. So now that we've assigned a score, I can go ahead and hit that again, and it'll show Carmine has 100. And then there's extra stuff. You can track how many seconds the player played or whatever. Text I don't think is used at the moment. And then the date, time that entry was made. So you can see the format here. You got a response here. You have this Dreamlo object, leaderboard object, and then one entry object. Now, when you're writing the code for this, I'll show this in a second, but you'll have to make sure to check if you only have one entry here, you won't get an array, but if you have multiple entries, that'll be an array. So more on that later. So let's go ahead and jump into a Unity project now that we've tested these two URLs and we know that they work just fine. So I've created a blank Unity project here, and I am going to need a few things. So the first thing I guess would be to create a canvas. All right, we're going to need a place to track our scores. So I'll just throw a canvas on the screen somewhere, wherever that is. There it is. And then I will add 3 text elements to it. In this case, I'm going to use TextMesh Pro because I'm a big fan of TextMesh Pro. It's a lot sharper and cleaner than regular text. In order to do that, you're going to get a little pop-up window here that says it's got to import some stuff. So you just import that. And then you'll get another notification down here. So we will import these as well. I don't think we needed both of those, but it's good to have it just in case. So I've created one entry on this canvas. Let me move the camera so that I can see what I'm looking at here. Not too far. All right. So where's the camera in relation to this? Let me go back in here and just set the camera to this view. Line with view. There we go. So now if I run this, I should see that new text in the middle of the screen. Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move this over a little bit and stretch it out just a skosh. And then I'm gonna create 2 more, just Control D to duplicate that. Move that one down and then Control D to duplicate it again. This isn't a course on UI, so I'm sure you can figure out the rest. I'm going to blank out the text on these so that they're empty. Perfect. All right, now I'm gonna need, well, we've got the canvas, we've got the text. We're gonna need something to parse the JSON. I'm currently using JSON.net from the asset store. It's not the latest version and it has problems if you're trying to make a Windows application. So for that, I would suggest you get the latest version from their GitHub, but I type JSON.net and this is the one I've been using. Works fine on my devices. Import that and import that. All right, now that that's taken care of, I'm gonna create a script on the canvas. You can create it wherever suits you best, but I'm just gonna put it here because there's nothing else on this page. And I'm gonna call it Leaderboard Manager. I've done this a few times, so it's still there. Right, so Leaderboard Manager. And then I'm gonna open that. Okay, so we're not gonna need the start method for this example. So I'll just go ahead and trash that. One thing I noticed, or I showed earlier, is when you're getting the results, it comes in this particular format, this object here that has different things nested inside of it. So we want to recreate those in C# classes so that we can have some nice binding. And the way I typically do this is I just go into the JSON here and then I look for a JSON to C# thingamabob and then just paste the JSON in, and typically it gives me all the classes that I need here. I've already have that copied. I changed the root object to what I called Dreamlo response, but otherwise it's the same thing. So I'm gonna need to create that class. I'll just add a new C# class and I'll call it Dreamlo classes. typically you want a class per file, but in this case, I'm just gonna dump them all into that one. I have it copied over here. As you can see, it's the same thing as we saw on that website. The only thing I changed was this was called root object, and I'm calling it Dreamlo response. But as we can see, that main object has a Dreamlo in it. The Dreamlo has a leaderboard in it, and leaderboards have entries in them, and entries have name, score, seconds, text, and date, which is what you can see in Postman. Dreamlo has leaderboard, while the root object has Dreamlo. Dreamlo has leaderboard, leaderboard has entries, entries have all these 5. So back in our leaderboard manager, we're gonna do a couple things real quick. I'm gonna create a few if statements in here just to do the setting and getting of the score. So first thing I want to do is do an if statement for pressing the S key on the keyboard. That's going to allow me to hit the S key to set a score. Not something you'll be doing in your game, but just a little maintenance to get this example running. All right, so real quick and simple, I created 2 if statements. If I'm pressing the S key, do something. If I'm pressing the G key, do something. So set the scores and get the scores. Now I'm going to create a couple of booleans just to make sure that that only happens once, because we don't want it happening for every time I'm holding down a key. I'm not sure if this is 100% necessary, but I like to put it in there just to avoid any issues. So is setting score is our first boolean, and private boolean is getting scores. Right, so then this if statement, I'm also going to change it here. As long as the S key is being pressed and we're not setting the score, then do that. And as long as the G key is pressed and we're not getting scores, blah, blah, blah. So then the first thing we want to do in here is setting to true. And then we'll do the same here for is getting is true, right? So once we press the S key, it's going to set that to true, so it won't keep doing it every frame, which is when the update method is running. All right, so we need to create 2 methods, one to set the leaderboard and one to get the scores. And they're going to be IEnumerators because they use the Unity web request. So they need to be set up that way. Okay, so for our set leaderboard score, like I said, it's going to be an IEnumerator. We're going to pass 2 parameters to it. They're both going to be strings. I know score should be a number, but you'll see why in a second. We've got a string for the username for the player and a string for the score. Now I've created a string called URL, which is currently empty. It's got this $sign in the front because we're going to use interpolation to get these fields into the text. So we'll need the URL to post score. So we'll go back to our save score URL here, and we'll copy paste that into this string variable. And so, like I said, we've got to use this URL format, add Carmine 100. So where it says Carmine, we'll blank that out, and we'll pass in, using string interpolation, this username. And then for the score, we will also do the same thing, score. So now you can see that it'll hit our URL and it'll pass in that username that we passed to this method and the score that we passed in also. So what's going to happen here is it's going to use the Unity web request to do a get on that URL. Then it's going to wait for a response. And when it gets it, then it'll just debug log saying that it worked. It will change our Boolean to is setting score false so that we can do it again if we needed to. And now we'll do the same for the getting the leaderboard. So I'll just literally copy paste this. And then I'll make some changes here. We'll change this to, we'll change this to get instead of set. And we'll get scores instead of score, and we will delete this. we'll replace this string with the URL for getting the results. So that's this other one that they give us. Copy that, paste that into there. We don't need the $sign because we're not interpolating anything here. So it's just a regular string. I'm going to go ahead and do a /5 at the end. That's going to limit the amount of results to just 5 because we don't want if we have 100 entries or 1,000 entries, but we're only showing 5 or 3 or whatever, you want to change this to as many numbers as you actually want back from that API. That way you're not sending more information than you need and you're not wasting bandwidth. So we're going to do the same exact thing. It's going to be using Unity Web Request. It's still a get. We're doing this the same. The only difference is when it's getting the results, we need to do something with that response that we get back. So we'll change this to received scores. I before E except after C, right? Yeah, okay. Received scores, and we'll change this to is getting scores. Right, all right. Now before we do all this, we've got to do a little bit of logic to convert the string into a JSON object. So we will need a string for the response data that we're going to get. Response data. You can call this whatever you want. And then we got to make sure it's in the right format. So I'm going to convert it to a UTF-8 to make sure that we can read it fine. And then we will get the request objects data. So that's download handler.data. And that will take the data that we get as a response from the API call, which would be this right here. It'll take that, make sure it's in the UTF-8 text format, and then we will assign it to a string. And then the next step is to take that string and parse the JSON and turn it into C# objects. So we're going to declare it as a Dreamlo response. We will call it response. Why not? And then here's where that JSON.NET library comes in. So we got JSON convert, and then we have deserialize object, right? Which will take the string that we pass it and convert it, or try to convert it, to whatever object we specify in this brace. So we want it to be a Dreamlo response because that's what we declared over there. So we will type in the same thing there, Dreamlo response, right? And then where's the text that we're converting? That would be our response data that we declared one line above that. And that's that. So it's going to take the data that we got back as a response, try to convert it into a Dreamlo response object. And if that works, it gets assigned to this variable. Now we'll need one more method, and I will go ahead and type that in real quick. But first, we're going to need another item up top here. We're going to need a way to get to those text items, the Text Mesh Pro items in the GUI. So we'll declare a public array of Text Mesh Pro items. So what is it? Text Mesh Pro UGUI. We'll make that an array, and we'll call this top scores. Right. And then we can go back down, and I'll create our last method we need, which is going to do the actual processing of the JSON response. All right, so now we've created this last method, which is just going to update the leaderboard, as it says right there. And it's expecting a Dreamlo response object, which we're creating up here. So basically the first thing it's going to do is it's going to iterate through the 3 top score text items that we have here, these 3 items here. It's just going to iterate through them and just clear them out in case there's a previously assigned value. And then we're going to iterate through each one of the response objects that we get. So in the JSON, in this example, we just have 1. Just so you know, this is actually going to fail because of what I spoke earlier about. This particular code that I'm writing is checking to see how many responses are presented. That expects it to be a list. If you only have one entry in the leaderboard, it's not a list, it's just one entry. Now I'll show you what that means in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and add another record to this. I'll just say Joe, set his score to 101. Bam. All right, now I need you to look at this. It's a very, very subtle change here. But you'll see that this is an object. It's got that curly brace, and then it just starts right into entry. That means that there's only one entry, right? It's not considered a list. But if I refresh this now, you'll see that there's this little bracket here. That means it's an array. So now there are two entries. So the code that I'm writing will work because you can have a count if it's a list. But if there's only one entry, then you can't have a count because it's not a list. So you'll have to write another method just to check to see if there's just one response. But in our example, we're just going to proceed as if there's more than one, right? Because you want multiple people playing your game. You want there to be more than one leaderboard entry. This is going to iterate through each one of those responses. In this example, we have two responses. So it's going to iterate through those two. And then it's going to assign the name to a variable called user and the score to a variable called score. Then it's going to assign it as the text to the text element that we added. So it's going to have the number of the entry. So it'll be like entry number 1, entry number 2. And then it'll have the username and their score. So we want to call this method once we have this response. So we'll come in here and just type in update leaderboard and pass it our response. All right. And now we want to use these two methods in our inputs up here. So we will come in here and we will, I'm going to create a variable to have a random score. So I'm just going to do an integer random score, and it's going to equal random.range. I don't know, somewhere from 100 to 500. It's going to be the random number that it generates. And then we'll do a start coroutine because these are enumerators, so they're not just regular methods. They have to be started as a coroutine. And then we'll go set leaderboard score, and it's expecting two parameters. So I'm going to do another string interpolation here, and I'm going to say user and then pass it that random number as an identifier for that user. It's going to look like that. And then our, oops, I'm in the wrong place. Yep, okay. Our second variable that we need to put in there, our parameter, is the score. So I'm going to use string interpolation again and put in that random number as the score that we're sending. I feel like I did something wrong here. So let's see, this is string interpolation. That does not belong there. Okay, perfect. So we're assigning a username of user with a number at the end, which is this random number that we generated. And then we're assigning that random number as the score as well. And that is the end of that one. And now we'll do the same thing for getting the scores. So we'll start the coroutine, and we will just have to call get leaderboard scores. Nothing fancy here. Boom. All right, now I believe this is as good as it gets. Only one way to find out, right? So let's go back to our Unity editor, and I don't know why this error keeps coming up, but let's just get rid of that. We should be good to go. If I hit run, we shouldn't have any problems. Cool, 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 cool. Now, if I hit S, we're gonna be setting a score. So we should get a debug log here letting us know that we set a new score, right? So we did that once. I'll do it one more time. And there you go. You see it's switched over to 2. So now if I hit the G key on my keyboard, we should show the new scores. And we did not. Okay, so I missed a very crucial step. Let's go ahead and cancel this real quick. I never assigned these text elements to that array. So if we go into our canvas where we created our leaderboard script and open this up, you'll see it says 0. We don't have any text items added to this array. So we'll go ahead and set this to 3 and then just drag these 3 text elements into this. All right, save that. And now, if I press G and cross my fingers, boom. Well, you can't see it because it's on the thing there, but it worked. Let's try to change. Let's get rid of our background. Where's this thing here? Let's get rid of the skybox and just go with a solid color. Yeah. All right, so now you can't see the background. So if I hit G, there you have it. We have 3 users. We have the Joe one that I entered manually. We have user 251, which is a random number that was generated. User 346, which is another random number. And I'll just go ahead and hit S to set another random. And then hit G again to reload them. There you see. I created another one with a higher score, 481. And it's working as described. And there you have it, a quick and easy leaderboard system as promised. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe to keep this channel going. Also, if you'd like the source code, please consider becoming a Patreon member. The link for that is in the description. Thanks again for watching. I'm still SkidVis. Peace out.